Welcome to the first lesson of CSEC Chemistry with Edu Solutions Institute. We'll be covering all topics from our CSEC syllabus as relates to chemistry. Our first lesson for today will be based on states of matter. So the first thing for chemistry is to know what exactly is matter, right? So matter is any particles that make up an object. So all objects are made up of matter because all objects have particles within them, right? So based on the syllabus, we focus on the three main types or states of matter. These states are basically where objects exist in. So objects can exist in a form of solids, liquids, and gases, right? How do we know that this is a solid? This is a solid because all its particles are connected. There are little space between them, right? We know that this is a liquid because it has more space between particles, but not too far apart. And then we know that these are gas because these particles spread out over a very large space, right? So these are the three main states of matter. Now, within states of matter, we should note that we can convert between different states, right? So under specific conditions, a gas can turn into a liquid or a solid can change into a liquid, right? So let's go with solid to a liquid. This change is adding heat to a solid. What it does will break the bonds between the particles so they can spread out more, right? So we have more spaces in it. This is called melting. An example of this would be like from ice, which is a solid, melting to form liquid, which is water. Right? We also can do a change in the opposite direction, where a liquid loses its heat, so the particles start to come closer together, and closer together turns them into a solid, and that process is called freezing. Right? So freezing is changing a liquid into a solid due to taking away heat from the liquid. Right? Let's go to a liquid to a gas. Liquid to a gas means that we're applying heat to the liquid, which makes the particles start spreading out because the bonds are broken. So hence this process is called evaporation. Right? And then we can also change from gas to a liquid as well, which means we're taking away heat from a gas. So the particles start to come closer together, building stronger bonds, and this process is called condensation. Right? And then finally, we can do this change, where we change directly from a solid right to a gas. So it doesn't go through the liquid state, right? And this means that we're adding heat to specific solids and they automatically at a point start turning directly into a gas. And this process is called sublimation. Now, as we notice, all changes going from this end to this end requires heat to be added, right? This heat is added to break the bonds between the particles. And then all changes from this end over to this end requires, these two would require heat being removed, right? So remove heat from a gas to get it into a liquid, or remove heat from a liquid to get it into a solid. And when we take away heat, then the particles don't move as freely and fast as possible. So hence they start coming closer together. So these are the three states of matter and the processes that they go through to convert between different states. Now, how can we prove that one, particles exist in objects, and they are moving. These, we can use two processes to prove this. One is called diffusion, right? And what diffusion is, it's the moving of particles from high concentration to low concentration. And what this means is, if we have a lot of particles in this part, right, these particles tend to move to areas where it's limited, right? And that process is called diffusion. An example is, we spray perfume at one end of a room, and then persons at the opposite end starts to smell that fragrance. And that's because the perfume particles will move from where it is a lot, from the area where it was sprayed, into the area where there was none. And that process is called diffusion. Another process, osmosis. This is the same movement, but this time we use of water from high to low concentration, but this time we're using selectively permeable membrane. So this requires moving of water particles, again from high concentration to where we have limited water. And this is only through a permeable membrane. Permeable membrane means it selects what particles to pass through, right? And it's going to select the water particles to move from high area to low area. So these two processes helps to explain that particles are always moving, right? Then we have a third term that we need to know, which is called surface tension. And surface tension is the creation of a membrane on particles or substances. So example would be a membrane created at the top of water that the lizards can actually walk on the top of the water. And that's due to the closeness of the particles and the attraction between them, right? So when water particles attract to each other, that process is called cohesion. Cohesion means the similar particles get attracted to each other. And the final term is adhesion. And adhesion is when unlike particles attract to each other. For example, we have a glass of water, and then the ice starts to melt, starts forming droplets of water on the glass. So those droplets of water is being attracted to the glass, right? And that process is called adhesion. Now, finally, in states of matter, it is to conquer that there are theory of matter, right? And the theory of matter basically explains to us how particles move. So it tells us that particles are in random motion, always moving. So even if it's a solid, the solid particles will vibrate, right? And so that's a form of movement. Liquid particles, the particles will slide over each other. And then for gas, they'll move in haphazard manner as far as the container allows it, right? The also tells us that there are attraction between the particles. So for solids, they have a very strong attractive force between the particles. That's what holds them close together. Liquids have a weaker attraction, but gases have very low attraction. So these particles are free to move apart from each other. Also tells us that solids are hard to compress. Why are they hard to compress? Because there is limited space between particles. And for you to compress something, you have to have space for the particles to move, right? So because there is limited space, we hard to get solids to compress. But for gases, a lot of space between particles. So when we compress gases, it will easier than liquids or solids. All right. So this culminates our lesson for today. I'll see you guys next week, where we'll continue with our C6 syllabus. See you. Take care.